Good evening. Welcome to the Savvy and JB show. We have a special guest. We have Chairman Omali Yeshitela, an activist, advocate, and organizer, also with the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. Uhuru, Chairman Omali.
Uhuru, Brother JB, thank you so much. And you too, Comrade Sister Savvy, thank you so much for helping us to get our views out to the world.
Definitely. Now, Chairman, you have been on both of our channels independently before, and we have actually been talking about the subsequent issues that have been happening with the FBI that happened in 2022 when they did a pre-dawn raid. And then we also spoke about the indictments that have been pushed on you, the unfair indictments that have been pushed on you by the Department of Justice. And so we can just do a quick review over that, the details about what's going on. And then we can get into what further is going on as of right now.
Splendid. Well, as you mentioned, in July of 2022, in fact, on July 29th, I was awakened, or rather some of us, my wife and I were awake already at 5 o'clock in the morning, and this thunderous sound came from outside our house, declaring that everybody at this address should come out with our hands empty and our hands up, and that this was the FBI. And immediately explosions began to occur. We were to learn later that even in the back stairwell of the house, this was happening, and throughout the neighborhood. And these were flashbang grenades that were going off. My wife, I went downstairs first to greet them, and I was greeted by lights in my face and the sight of armored personnel vehicle were standing around which were these camouflage military forces who were armed with military assault weapons that were had mounted on them laser targeting devices that were hitting me in the chest when I came out. So it was clear that this was a threat on my life. And I thought really that they were going to kill me, as they had done with Fred Hampton in 1969 in a pre-dawn raid there in Chicago. And so I came downstairs after having asked my wife to call and let people know we were under siege. But she couldn't succeed in doing that because they had jammed our phones. So my wife, she comes down behind me, and as she opens the door, she's almost hit in the face by a drone that they've sent up the stairs into our house. I am zip tied behind my back. My wife is handcuffed behind her back. They went into our home. They were there for hours. And at the same time, I was to learn that they had gone across town, and we live in a predominantly African community here in St. Louis, North St. Louis. In fact, most impoverished sector of the city. And at the same time, they had gone to South St. Louis, where we also have an office that's headquartered, that's run by the African People's Solidarity Committee, a primarily white force sector of our movement. They had raided them too. They had come to this place. They'd knocked down every door. They had broken every door that in the place. They broke windows. They broke windows at my home. They took devices, communication devices. They took laptops and cell phones and all kinds of devices. And at the same time, in St. Petersburg, Florida, not too far from where you're located, JB, they went to my home. This is where I'm from, though my wife and I are here in St. Louis. And there was an army of them that went into the house, took devices and everything. They went to our office in St. Petersburg, Florida. They knocked down doors. They took our radio temporarily off the air. It was, and then they raided our files. They stole documents. It was an incredible military type assault, and we were to learn that this was happening because they had indicted a Russian national in Russia. And they said our name came up in the indictment, and they had a search warrant.
Mm-hmm.
An extraordinary thing that they had done. It was a military attack, and they said to get a search warrant because they said that we have this relationship with a Russian national. So that's happening then. 9 months later, and we were declared unindicted co-conspirators with Alexander Ironov, the Russian in Russia. But no charges were made. 9 months later, they indict us. And that 9 months is a period of time which we have no legal standing. So we couldn't even go into a courtroom and say, we want them to stop doing what they are doing, because officially they haven't done anything. I know it's extraordinary, but that's where we were. And so it was, they indicted us 9 months later. And I think it was something like 3 months later, they actually had us a hearing in Tampa, Florida, the federal court there, where they booked us, where they fingerprinted us, they mugshot me, they had us in leg irons and handcuffs and what have you, and then put us on this bond, supposed to be a good bond, a nice bond, because it was a $25,000 bond, signature bond. But the conditions were my passport was taken, no weapons could be in the house. I had to report to them weekly. I could not travel without permission. And these were the circumstances they dropped on us. And most recently, we've learned that we're supposed to go to trial on September 3rd in Tampa, Florida. And so we're preparing for that now. And this is one of the things that makes this discussion that we're having here today important too, because we're saying all out to Tampa, Florida, September 3rd. We're saying between now and then it's going to be a long, hot summer, that we're going to do a lot of work organizing and galvanizing people and organizations to be in Tampa. So that's sort of where we are, Comrade JB.
Yeah.
And I'll add to, for those who are not aware, Black Agenda Report has also been keeping up with the story about Uhuru, and I want to share this as well. We make this a little bit bigger for everybody, because they did actually post an article. This was in April. Black Agenda Report, April 3rd. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Uhuru 3 put state on trial in fight back against bogus charges. So I want to hear a little bit about this as well, Omali, because it looks like you're outside of the courthouse here. Can we talk a little bit about what happened in this photo?
Thank you so much. That's really important, because what happened was that our lawyers, we have an extraordinary battery of lawyers who pursuing a group defense. And what our lawyers had done was make a motion that the charges be dismissed. And they raised all of the issues around free speech and said that, and for the purpose of the motion, they had to say that even if we did what the government said we did, is covered by the First Amendment and free speech, that we have a right to have said things, even if they said and it was true that we were benefiting from some resources from the Russians and advice from the Russians, that we had the right. It didn't violate the Constitution. Of course, we didn't do those things, but that was the argument. And the motion, the brief that was filed by Leonard Goodman out of Chicago, who the brief that was filed went through the history of the African People's Socialist Party Uhuru movement, the history that we have being opposed to NATO, because one of the charges is that it was the Russians who had us to come out in opposition to Ukraine. The history of even running political persons for office, because one of the charges is 2017, 2019, when we ran two comrades, Jesse Neville and Akile Anai in St. Petersburg for city council and mayor, that it was the Russians who paid for that. And we can also, our motion talked about how we've traveled all around the world. I have for 40, 50 years trying to win support for our struggle. And so this thing that they're claiming about somehow my trip to Moscow in 2015, 2 trips to Moscow for conferences sponsored by a non-governmental organization there was somehow evidence of working for Russia. So our motion, to dismiss the charges raises all of this stuff, and also says that this idea that we are sowing dissension and we passing on disinformation because what we said about Ukraine, because we said that the so-called Ukraine war was a part of a war against Russia that the United States has been involved in for many, many years. This is even before NATO was created and obviously subsequent to NATO. So we said that we got professors and everything who come out who've talked about this, and they said, well, it doesn't matter if it's true. They said that disinformation is not disinformation because else is untrue. They said even the truth can be disinformation if it serves the Russians, something to that effect. So that's the logic that they're using, a real circular kind of logic that says it doesn't matter what we've done. And then they will place restrictions on what we can put forth as evidence in the trial, like the things I mentioned that's in this motion. To dismiss, they would try to make sure that we don't talk about this history, that we don't talk about the U.S. government attacks on the FBI attack on Marcus Garvey, that we don't talk about what they did with Du Bois, that we don't talk about what they did with Paul Robeson and all these other people, what they did to the Black Panther Party, that we don't talk about COINTELPRO. So they would try to place all kinds of restrictions on what can enter into this discussion. Said none of that makes any difference. The only thing that makes any difference is that somehow in 2014 we became employees of Russia, and so doing they destroy, they assault the agency of Black people. That we don't have enough intelligence to know that we're being oppressed and kicked around. That it takes somebody white to come in and influence us and tell us that you're being oppressed, etc. That's part of what it is that they're doing. They will liquidate our whole history, and they will liquidate their history. And that's the ominous thing, because their history, what they've done to us, their history that allows us to be able to say that you can talk about the First Amendment, and we are demanding that you respect the First Amendment, but we also recognize that the First Amendment was not written for us, that the Bill of Rights was not written for us. The First Amendment was created in 1791. We were still living as slaves at that time. We didn't even have anything that they would recognize as freedom until 1865. And even after that, it wasn't good enough. That's why there's a Civil Rights Bill in 1964 and a Voting Rights Bill in 1965, because there were no rights for Black people. And this is what makes it extremely dangerous for white people who might fall into the trap that they're trying to present here by saying because it's Black people in Russia, that it's all right to attack us. But it's not our First Amendment rights they're attacking, because we never had them. It's yours. So they're coming to get you through us. And that's the part of the point that we really are trying to make as well. So, that's their conundrum. That's because we didn't write the First Amendment. We didn't write it. We didn't write it. It was not the Uhuru First Amendment. It's not Omali Yeshitela's First Amendment. It's your First Amendment. And we're not asking Joe Biden or anybody else like that to become African internationalists and support the revolution. We are holding your feet to the fire to support what you say you believe in. This is foundational, ideologically, politically, legally to the United States itself. This whole issue of free speech, et cetera, et cetera. That's the thing that we are pushing them on. And I think that it's an extraordinary moment in history.
What happened to you and your organization kind of went under the radar, because I think it was that same week when the FBI actually did a raid on Trump and Mar-a-Lago, the same week that they did the pre-dawn raid for you and the African People's Socialist Party. So yours kind of got swept under the rug. It kind of reminds me of when Farrah Fawcett died, but then the same week Michael Jackson died. So Michael Jackson's death got more coverage than Farrah Fawcett's, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing. And everybody was like so focused on, oh my God, Trump. But part of me is like, wait a minute, did you guys just see our free speech rights attacked as citizens with an organization that's doing mutual aid and work on the ground? Like, Trump was really just like, look at the birdie over here. Don't look at what we're doing to the African People's Socialist Party over here. That's what it looks like. And it's like, are you paying attention? It's just like whenever we have like big events like holidays or like a Super Bowl or something like that. Like, look what happened with the Super Bowl, and then look what they were doing in Gaza.
Yep.
It's the same thing. It's like they don't want you to know that they're really attacking your rights on a deeply fundamental level. And let me ask you this. Do you think that in some ways there are some stories that they sensationalize that take the focus off of what they're trying to do as far as taking away what little rights we have? I know that.
Yeah.
That don't have rights.
That's clear. They would do things to help people lose focus on our own circumstances, our own conditions. And a lawyer, I think, made the point that what they did to us and what they're doing to us with this law, I think it's something like 951, something that law that was created in 1917. And it's no coincidence that 1917, because that's the Russian Revolution and all these other things that they felt like they had to suppress at the time they made certain kinds of laws. But this is the first time in history that this law has been used against just speech. Trump, for example, they claim Trump took some documents and that he wasn't supposed to happen, although Biden did it too, but they haven't charged him. And others who they've used this law against had nothing. They were at least accused of something. Here, they're not talking about it was 5 kilos versus 20 kilos or any other kind of behavior, crime, criminal activity. It's just speech that they are targeting here. And this is the thing that, and so people will have an ability, even when they see Trump, because people have mentioned Trump. And by the way, what we see with Trump is a contest that's happening between sectors of the ruling class themselves who are using the state to attack each other. But all of them are united in attacking us. And so, yes, I do believe, I know they do that all the time. And I'm looking how African people in particular, can get carried away by Drake versus whatever the hell else they throw out for us to be looking at, as opposed to the reality, that's happening in the world. But what they've done, though, is really important in the sense that they put us in a situation not very different from what we saw in the 1960s with our communities, in the sense that when they talk the Russian talk, when they do all of this other stuff, they talk about Ukraine and they have to deal with the question of reparations. They talk about giving us an opportunity to speak to ordinary Black people about what's happening in the world and show our people and our communities that where we see people facing gentrification, that they look at this murderous gentrification that's happening in Gaza right now. It gives us the opportunity to talk about Leonard Peltier, talking about gentrification. Look at the indigenous people lost every damn thing. And here's Leonard Peltier, 50 years in prison for defending the land that they stole from the indigenous people. This gives us an opportunity to have a much broader, much greater discussion among people. And this is where the revolution lies, in terms of an informed population in our communities that has organization and conscious of what's happening around them, that we give them the ability to see within this, in the particular contradictions that we are confronted with: police violence, gentrification, and all these other things. In the particular contradiction, there's a universal contradiction that's there. And our responsibility is to help the people see this universal contradiction that informs this particular thing that we are dealing with. And that's where the revolution lies. And that's what they're doing on college campuses. A whole new generation of people, white people and others, who are now in motion now and being politically informed. And guess what they're talking about? They're talking about colonialism. They're not talking about racism. They're talking about colonialism, And our responsibility is to show them that colonialism is colonialism is colonial. Colonialism is colonialism in Gaza. Colonialism is colonialism in St. Louis. It's the colonialism in Cuba. It's colonialism, all these other places. That's the foundation of the whole damn system, rests upon the stooped backs and scarred backs of the colonized peoples of the world. And I think we will, we look forward to being able to build this massive movement for resurgence, not just to have talking heads, not just to see who can get the most likes and most views, etc., but to take stuff, have people engaged in overturning these relationships, and fighting for the power over our own lives. You're not fighting for power when you're fighting against racism, but you're fighting against colonialism. And not only that, you're not just fighting against white people when you fight against colonialism. White people can fight against colonialism too. They can join with the colonized people to fight against colonialism. And this is something that we, have a responsibility to do. And that's why, like I said, we're looking between now and September 3rd, when this trial happened, the long hot summer. We plan to have massive mobilization of oppressed peoples coming from everywhere, with every question, from the issue of what they're doing to Cuba, to Palestine, to people at Cop City, and our cases, and the struggle of oppressed African women, and putting Mexicans in cages in the southern border. All of this stuff, bring it all together, have a massive mobilization there in St. Petersburg, Florida. We intend to increase the population of St. Petersburg, Tampa, Florida, in a magnificent way, bringing everybody who can be brought to this. And because our objective, we say the trial has already begun, and it's not in that courtroom there. It's in public opinion. The masses of our people who they're trying to keep us. That's why they use flashbang grenades. That's why they're taking people off airplanes and taking their passports. They don't want the people to know. They don't want this kind of information. We're going to bring massive people together and then give them organization and help everybody to see the connection between all of these struggles. So there's different iterations of the struggle against colonialism, but we all involved in the same struggle. And that means that you can now have effectively a division of labor. A division of labor. You can't get this in cyberspace, right? But you can get this among people engaged in trying to change their lives. That's what the Mexicans want. That's what the Africans want. That's what the Filipinos want. That's what, peoples of the world, they don't want to live like this anymore. It's intolerable.
I will say, Chairman, it's interesting when you mention labor and the type of movement that you want to build, because we are seeing more of the unions, or some of the unions, particularly the UAW, has decided to join along in the Palestinian movement. So this is big, like to have a union that is that big, that I think everyone knows at the UAW, to vocally come out and support the Palestinian movement. And it makes me wonder about, like, with this particular trial with the Uhuru group, what if labor could also participate and bring their voice to support you as well? What if, like, the UAW showed up to support your voice as well? Do you think that would speak volumes and really push more mainstream media to cover this trial in a fair way?
The mainstream media is not going to cover it in a fair way, even if you kidnap their mamas and said you're going to do bad things to them unless they're fair. No, this is part of the crisis that they're confronted with right now, is that there are even many Democratic Party people, many people who go along with the oppression of the Palestinian people. They have to contend with this heavy-handed measure that Biden and the Israelis are using, and how that's undermining their own thing. That's the labor union, generally speaking. And this is not to besmirch, like union work. But too often is an arm of the Democratic Party, just like the NAACP is an arm of the Democratic Party. And so a lot of them are now jumping ship from the strategic direction that the Democrats are moving, and there's a better way to do this thing. If you can make some kind of concessions, if Israel would just make some concessions, if you would just say, just cease fire and let some food get in, etc. But it doesn't resolve the question that you're talking about stolen land that the people are locked into, and that's what the Palestinians are fighting for. They're not fighting. They didn't engage in this movement, this struggle to have a ceasefire. They gave in this movement from sea but it is from the river to the sea. The Palestine must be free. And so some people and some institutions who are part of the democratic apparatus disagree. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing disagreements happening within that apparatus. That's why some of them want to change. If they can get somebody else to run to be the face of the Democratic Party in this election, they'll do it. Even though I think it's too late to rescue the Democratic Party from this process they're involved in. So I think that's part of it. And yes, I do believe, that more and more people can't join you if you don't draw some lines. If you just, just out there and everything is okay, then what do they have to join? But when you resurrect the real movement that people were extraordinarily sympathetic with, that set the terms for what progress looked like in this country and around this world, with African people, Black people in this country, Black Panthers, with Che Guevara and Cuba and the Palestinian movement, all of these things, they represent this incredible move to the future that people are extraordinarily sympathetic with. And we saw that happen. And we saw, that happened. And I just wanted to make another statement just in terms of this thing about Hamas. And they lied on Hamas about Hamas hating Jews. Well, the thing is that whether Hamas hate Jews or not is really not the damn question, because the Palestinians did not kill the damn Jews. It was white people who killed those Jews in Germany. And I just think that's really important to say that. And Jews are people like the rest of us. And as people who live in human society, they are governed by the same laws of society as every damn body else. And this whole notion, if I were Jewish, I would be really concerned about somebody trying to set me up. That's a setup to make Jews different from everybody else. That's what the people who hate Jews are saying, that you're different. And that's why the base is used to kill Jews and things like that. Jews are just like everybody else. And if you want to get retribution, or if you want to get reparations for what happened to Jews, you did right by asking Germany to pay reparations. If you're looking for a homeland for Jews, you don't take the land from the Palestinians, or like once you were threatening to do, take it from Uganda. You take it from Germany. You take it from those people who did all these crimes against Jews. And you talk about how they would deflect your attention to something that's not even, and then they will make the worst crime in history, they say, is the worst crime in history. There's never been a crime in history worse than the 6 million Jews who were killed. Well, during the colonial process, read Hosea Jaffe on A History of Africa. During the colonial process, there was 600 million people estimated to be in Africa. They killed 200 million African people. They killed a third of the African population. There was no such thing as genocide when they was killing Black people and they're killing indigenous people. Now genocide is this whole thing. And I'm opposed to murder. I'm opposed to mass murder of anybody in the world, but I'm not going to let this white power scapegoat the Palestinian, the Arabs, or Farrakhan, or the guy, the rapper, etc., for some anti-Semitic thing about Jews. Go to the source. Who caused the damn problem that they're fighting from? They can't. In Palestine, where Palestinians were Jewish, that they were Arab, they were Muslims, and they were Christians. That's what Palestine was. They created this false contradiction, and that we're looking at now. Not Hamas, not the Palestinians, and Hamas is the response to this thing they did. And if you want to go further than that, look at the Balfour Declaration. During the same time we're talking about the Russian Revolution, 1917, 1916, Balfour, where the Lord Balfour in England gave Palestine to white people, the Jews in Europe. So this is what we're looking at. And they created all these borders and stuff that we're looking at. Look at the Sykes-Picot agreement between France and England that was supposed to include Russia, but it couldn't include Russia because Russia made the damn revolution. But they thought they could still get Russia to participate because so many of the Russian leaders were Jewish, like Trotsky and some of the others, etc. But they redivided the world. What you look at now in terms of Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, the existing borders, Saudi Arabia, White people, England and France created those borders. That's causing all the hell that we're looking at. Look at it. Google it. Sykes-Picot. It's spelled P-I-C-O-T. This is the arrangement that they made, and we're suffering from that arrangement today, and they're killing us because we want to get out of that arrangement, and we might make mistakes in the process of doing it, and people do that, especially when you put them under severe stress and what have you. People make mistakes, and people say things that they might not say otherwise, etc. But the problem is not those mistakes and what they said. The problem is the oppression of the whole goddamn world by this colonial setup that's resting on all of us.